So this is the time of the year that I love to go ahead and pull out my tobacco fragrances that I have in my collection. I absolutely love that note for this time of the year. So I'm going to be going over 5 fragrances that I have in my collection that I think are some of my favorite sort of tobacco fragrances for this time of the year. So definitely stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Jamar from Vegas Scents. And again, in this video, I'm giving you all 5 fragrances that I have in my collection that are based off of tobacco, the note. And to anyone that's brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And to everyone watching, go ahead and leave a like and a comment. All right. So just to start the list off, this fragrance is a fragrance that I've owned before. I've sold it and now I own it again. And it is definitely one of the more, I guess, more well-known sort of fragrances. I do think attention is sort of fading away from this fragrance, but again, I absolutely love it. And this is going to be Dolce & Gabbana's the One EDP. And even though this isn't like entirely, I would say, like tobacco focused fragrance, it obviously does have, you know, a tobacco in this fragrance. I would say the tobacco in this is kind of like a, more so kind of like a sweeter sort of tobacco. I would say like a sweet tobacco leaf sort of smell. And it mixes really well with like the sort of ambery touch that you get from Dolce & Gabbana's the One, as well as sort of like a fresh spicy cardamom. All right, so again, I absolutely love this fragrance. This is going to be best suited, I would say, for like, you know, those kind of cooler nights. Obviously, the performance is not necessarily great on most people. At least with this bottle that I have here anyway, I get pretty decent performance out of this one, at least about 6 to 7 hours, which at least for me, you know, when wearing this at night, I believe that that's enough. So again, this is going to be Dolce & Gabbana's the One EDP. All right, so the next fragrance, this one, in my opinion, I would say this is probably going to be like the strongest fragrance that I have on this list so far. And this is going to be Alexandria Fragrance's 1981X. This is going to be their take on Xerjoff's Naxos. This fragrance is, I would say, probably my favorite take on a sort of tobacco fragrance. So this has like a really sort of distinct, sort of crisp and fresh bergamot note up top. I believe there's also like some lavender in this as well. And then you get like the honey mixed with the tobacco and some florals. This is just a really sort of unique unisex take on a tobacco fragrance. And in my opinion, I would say it's probably one of the most sort of mass appealing sort of tobacco fragrances that I've ever smelled. The performance on this is also, like, I would say, super beast mode. When you spray this on, this isn't a fragrance that you really need to spray like 10, 12, 14 times. At least this Alexandria version, and you know, I mean, I can't really speak for the original Naxos from Xerjoff, but at least this version, you really only need, I would say, anywhere from about 3 to 5 sprays, and that is going to be enough to get you through to like the next day pretty much. Especially if you spray it on your clothes, you're going to be smelling this on your clothes until you wash them. All right, so again, the performance on this is really good. The smell is top notch. And I would say, again, this is probably my favorite sort of tobacco based fragrance that I have. And again, this is going to be Alexandria Fragrance's 1981X. All right, so I almost kind of feel guilty bringing this fragrance up in videos because I know exactly how hard this is to get. And I mean, really, it's been that way for, I would say, at least several years now. Because when I was able to finally get my hands on this bottle, I had been looking for this fragrance for, I don't know, probably like 6 to 8 months or so before I actually got it. And this is going to be F.A. Paris Fragrance World's After Effect. All right, so this is the Fragrance World's take on Initio Side Effect. And this is just sort of like a boozy, spicy sort of tobacco scent. It is, in my opinion, it's unisex, but I would say, at least in my opinion, it does slightly lean masculine a little bit. Maybe some people might disagree with that. Some people might, maybe look at this as being like a super sweet fragrance and it leans feminine. I think that this does lean slightly masculine, in my opinion. But either way, this is another one of those sort of tobacco kind of cooler weather bangers that I love wearing around this time of the year. Just kind of throw this on like with a hoodie and some sweatpants on. And this is like an amazing fragrance. Now, this is going to be a fragrance that you can kind of wear more kind of formally, I would say, to, more so like upscale events or whatnot. But at the same time, this is going to be, still a fragrance that you can wear casually. The performance on this is also pretty beast mode. I would say that this doesn't necessarily project as much as what the Alexandria 1981X does. And I would also say that the longevity is also not as much as what this is. But in my opinion, this is a slightly more sort of lighter aromatic sort of fragrance. And this, in my opinion, is a slightly more kind of denser, thicker type of fragrance. All right. So, definitely I would say be careful with how many times you spray this fragrance, because even though, again, in my opinion, it doesn't project as loudly as what this does, I think that the projection is a little bit more tolerable, at least for me, when it comes to the 1981X than what it can be if you were to overspray this fragrance. All right. This, to me, is a fragrance that if you do overspray it, too much, it is something that can become headache inducing, at least for me anyway. But again, the performance on this is amazing. The smell on this is amazing. This is, I would say, again, one of the better sort of tobacco scent profiles. And again, this is F.A. Paris Fragrance World's After Effect. All right, so this is actually extremely close to the original fragrance that it's cloning. And this is going to be Maison Alhambra's Tabac. This is the Dior Tabacular clone. I've done a side-by-side comparison video on the channel between this and Tabacular. And, pretty much the main differences that I kind of got from, the Tabacular and this fragrance was Tabacular, at least in the opening, is, slightly smoother. And also it is not as sort of green, I would say, or earthy as what this fragrance seems to be, at least in the opening. Dior's Tabacular is definitely smoother. It's better blended, especially in the opening. And it is, in my opinion, it does have a little bit more of sort of like a sweeter touch than what the Maison Alhambra's Tabac has. Like I said, the Tabac, it comes off as being slightly more earthier, which kind of gives it more of sort of like a rougher feel in the opening than what Dior's Tabacular does. But either way, this is a pretty solid fragrance, especially once this actually dries down. Pretty much once this dries down, when you kind of go back and forth between this and Dior's Tabacular, there's really not many differences that you can really pick up on. Which, obviously that's going to be the main part of the fragrance. So for what this typically goes for, I think, just depending on where you can find this at, if you can find this at a place like, FragranceSpy.ca or LabellePerfumes.com, then you're going to be able to get this for under $25, I believe. Anywhere else, you're probably going to be looking at like around $35 to $40. But either way, I would say that this is still worth it, even at those prices, for, how close this comes to the original fragrance, which is, I think like over $300. So definitely check this one out, man. This is like a really unique, in my opinion, it is a very unique sort of tobacco fragrance that has a really, really sort of sweet honey note in it. It has plum, and then it has multiple different types of tobacco. It does come off as a really, really sort of sweet fragrance, not really gourmand in my opinion, but just a really sort of sweet tobacco type of fragrance. All right, so again, this is going to be Maison Alhambra's Tabac. And I went ahead and saved the last fragrance, or my favorite fragrance out of these, for last. So this one is definitely a fragrance that I fell in love with pretty much immediately. And I actually just got this one. This is going to be Maison Alhambra's Exclusif Tabac. So this is Maison Alhambra's take on Carolina Herrera's Mystery Tobacco, I believe is what it's called. This is really, really good. So this does have a lot of similarities to Carlisle and the other, clone of Carlisle that I have, Tabac. Tabac, I do prefer the opening of that fragrance a little bit more than what I do with this one. There's just, I would say, maybe I don't necessarily love the way that the tobacco kind of comes off when you first spray this fragrance on. Not necessarily in love with that, but I would say once you start getting to like the mid and the dry down of this fragrance, it does start to smell a lot like what Tabac does, in terms of that sort of almost kind of chocolatey sweet sort of, feel that you get in the dry down with that fragrance. That's the same kind of, feel that I get from this fragrance as well. The only difference is this one just seems, it has much better projection, and definitely better longevity than what Tabac does. I would even say that, this is probably on par with like what Carlisle has in terms of its longevity, and probably even better, I would say. I still need to test this one a little bit more and maybe kind of test it side by side with Carlisle, but I do think that this does beat out Carlisle. And just out of, those sort of, different fragrances that I've smelled that are in the same vein, so this, Tabac, Carlisle, Hafez 1984 from Alexandria Fragrances. I think when you kind of, compare all of those fragrances, and I haven't smelled Mancera's Red Tobacco, but from what I understand is 1984, Hafez 1984, that one, it does smell a lot like Red Tobacco. So just out of all of those sort of scent profiles that I smell, I can definitely say that this so far, I think, is my favorite. Just overall, I think this is the best fragrance out of all of those. I'll have to, actually get a sample of the original from Carolina Herrera and, kind of do a side-by-side comparison. But I mean, based off of how close the other fragrance was from this line, the Exclusive Saffron, that was almost like a one-to-one clone. And based on comments that I've seen all over the internet about this fragrance, this one is pretty much the same way. So I will still get a sample and do a video to, just kind of definitively let you all know how close this comes to the original. But if those, comments that I've seen are true, that this is pretty much a one-to-one clone almost of that fragrance, then I would say I'm very happy with the purchase of this fragrance. I was able to pick this one up on fragrancebuy.ca for like $21 plus shipping. So a little bit over, $30 for this. And this is a 100 ml bottle. If you can find this on a website like that, or even, something like LaBelle, normally they're pretty cheap as well, then I would say absolutely scoop this up, especially if you do like tobacco scents, or if you're familiar with scents like Carlisle, then absolutely pick this up, no question. Again, even for a higher price, like maybe, I don't know, $30 to $40, I would say with the quality that you get with this fragrance, it's still going to be worth it, but it's an absolute steal at that sort of, sub $25 price. All right. So again, this is going to be Maison Alhambra's Exclusif Tabac. And that is the list, man. So definitely let me know, have you all smelled any of these fragrances? Have you smelled all of them? And definitely let me know what you all think about these tobacco fragrances that I've featured on this list today. Do you love these? Do you hate them? Are they just okay? Also, what other tobacco fragrances are you wearing during this time of the year? Or which actual tobacco fragrances do you recommend to people during this time of the year? So definitely let me know. Again, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. Also, to anyone watching, leave a like and a comment. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see y'all in the next video.